Ku, you're a failure. Those words had never been spoken in the past 7 years. When Li Wei pursued me, she said Ku was a genius. When we got married, she said I was the best choice she ever made. In the early days of our startup, she held my hand and said we'd be together forever. I believed it for 7 whole years. Until that night, the celebration banquet was held in the largest ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light. Li Wei stood on stage in a champagne-colored gown, raising her glass, her face flushed with triumph. Below sat the entire company staff, several important client representatives, and the heads of the overseas procurement team. 3 blonde, blue-eyed foreigners in crisp suits at the head table. On behalf of the company, I announce. Li Wei's voice carried through the microphone across the hall. Our official partnership with ATL Group is signed. Total order value, $33 million. Thunderous applause erupted. People whistled. Some stood up to clap. I saw Li Wei's radiant smile on stage, a brilliance I once knew well. She'd smiled like that when we won the college debate championship together. She'd always been that way. Competitive, ambitious, unwilling to settle for ordinary. I sat in the corner, wearing the dark gray suit she'd bought me last year. She'd asked me not to sit at the head table. Too many clients. Not enough room. Be understanding. I understood. Every time she asked me to be understanding over the years, I quietly stepped aside. In the first 3 years of our startup, she was stressed and short-tempered. I understood. Later, she closed several big deals and started attending more social events, often coming home late, reeking of alcohol. I understood. Then she came home later and later, talked to me less and less. I still understood. I understood for 7 years. On stage, Li Wei was still giving her speech, thanking the team, thanking the clients, thanking the overseas partners for their trust. Not once did she mention my name, even though the core tech solution that ATL had been so impressed with was a bottom-up architecture I'd spent 4 months writing alone. All that talk about independent R&D and breakthrough innovation, every line of code had been typed by my hands at my table. A colleague whispered, Ku, wasn't this tech solution primarily your work? Why didn't Ms. Li mention you? Before I could answer, Xiao Lu from finance chimed in. Oh, Ms. Li is the boss now. Ku is more like family now. Family doesn't need to go on stage. She laughed cheerfully, oblivious to how deep her words cut. Family. Yeah. 6 months ago, I'd lost my formal position at the company. Li Wei said, you're good at tech. Step back and be an advisor. I'm under so much pressure from business development that you take care of things at home. And I'd actually agreed. I watched her at that long table, toasting clients, laughing, chatting. The light fell on her face. She was still beautiful when she smiled, just like she was the year we graduated. But when she looked at me, that light had long since faded from her eyes. Halfway through the dinner, I went to the restroom. On my way back, I ran into Zhao Jiaming in the hallway. He was Li Wei's new partner, recruited from another company last year. New business, knew how to work a room, and was slick with words. He was leaning against the wall, smoking. When he saw me, he smirked. Ku, congratulations. Your wife landed a huge deal. Yeah? I didn't want to engage. He blew out a stream of smoke and gave me a sideways look. But seriously, Ku, what are you going to do now? Li Wei's a big deal in this circle now. You can't just keep being her support staff forever. My hands clenched in my pockets. But I said nothing. I walked past him and back to the banquet. Another half hour passed. As the event was winding down, Li Wei came over, leaned in, and whispered in my ear, head home first. I need to take the clients to a bar nearby. Her voice was light, but the tone carried an unmistakable command. I looked up at her. Her face still wore that practiced smile from working the room, but her eyes were cold. What time will you be back? Not sure. Don't wait up. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked outside the hotel. The night wind was strong. I buttoned my jacket and stood at the curb, waiting for a cab. Neon lights flickered overhead. Cars streamed by. Everyone had somewhere to go. I had a home, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It was nearly 11 when I got back. I showered, then sat on the couch waiting for Li Wei. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching. I scrolled through my phone, finding nothing interesting. On the coffee table sat a copy of today's contract, of thick, dozens of pages. I flipped through it idly. When I got to the technical appendix, I froze. It was my solution. Word for word. Not a single change. Not even punctuation. But on every page header, the listed project leads were Li Wei and Zhao Jiaming. Not me. I closed the document and set it on the table. A dull ache spread through my chest that like someone was grinding a blunt knife into my heart. Li Wei didn't come back until after 1 in the morning. She hadn't been drinking, but her clothes carried the mingled scent of perfume, smoke, and alcohol from the bar. She kicked off her heels, walked into the living room, and frowned when she saw me still awake. "Why aren't you asleep?" "Waiting for you," I said. "I want to talk about today's signing." She tossed her bag onto the couch and sat down with an exhausted, irritated air. "Talk about what?" "The tech solution. I wrote it, but my name isn't on the appendix as project lead." "Li Wei, I don't understand." She was silent for 2 seconds. Then she stood up, walked to the entryway cabinet, rummaged around, and pulled out a manila envelope. She came back, set it on the coffee table, and slid it toward me. "Sign it." I looked down. The envelope read, "Divorce Agreement, Chen Ku." She stood across from me, backlit by the living room light. Her face was in shadow, unreadable. "Let's get a divorce." I sat on the couch. The air around me seemed to vanish. My ears rang at the echo of that banquet applause still ringing. But now it sounded like noise. "What did you say?" I asked. "Divorce." Her voice was flat, devoid of inflection. "You keep the house. I keep the car. We split the savings. As for the company's shares, the portion you transferred to me earlier stays with me. But I'll give you compensation." "Compensation?" I stood up, my legs weak. I gripped the arm of the couch to steady myself. "Li Wei, we've been together 7 years. 7 years. Are you out of your mind because of this deal?" "I'm not out of my mind." She looked up at me, her eyes completely sober and cold. "Chen Ku, let me be honest with you. The pace I'm moving at now you can't keep up. You're good at tech, but you don't know how to network, how to socialize, how to build relationships. The company got where it is because I was out front fighting. Your code, no matter how good, without me out there selling. Who's paying for it?" I watched her lips move. Every word cut like a knife. She paused, then added in a quieter voice, gentler, but crueler. "Chen Ku, you don't belong at my level anymore. Sign it. It's better for both of us." "Don't belong." I stood frozen. 7 years ago, the night she told me I was a genius, IT had been in a living room just like this. Except back then, it was a rented apartment, so small we couldn't even fit a couch. She'd wrapped her arms around my waist and said, "Chen Ku, we're going to make big money and buy a big house." I believed her. I'd poured everything into writing code and building solutions. She charged ahead. I paved the way behind. We went from a tiny startup with second-hand desks to a company of dozens of employees. And now she said I didn't belong to Li Wei. My voice was shaking, but I kept it under control. "What about the tech solution?" "Don't you owe me an explanation?" The tech solution was submitted under the company's name. I'm the legal representative and majority shareholder. She said it flatly. "If you want to sue me, go ahead. See who wins." "Chen Ku, don't make this ugly." She pulled a pen from her bag and set it on the table. "Sign it. I'll have the lawyers process it tomorrow." "Tonight." "You should. Find somewhere else to stay." I looked down at the divorce agreement. The clauses were typed neatly. I remembered the day we got married, standing in line at the county clerk's office. She'd held my hand and asked if I was nervous. I said a little. She said she was too. Was this the same woman? I took nothing. I walked out the door in my pajamas, barefoot in my slippers. The hallway light flickered on. Harsh white. Behind me, the door clicked shut. Locked. I stood there, my phone in my pajama pocket with 30% battery. $400 in my bank account. The elevator went up and down. People came and went. No one looked at me twice. A man in his pajamas in the middle of the night. To anyone else. Just another pathetic husband kicked out by his wife. I went down to the ground floor and sat on the steps outside the entrance. It was summer. Not cold, but the dew was heavy. After a few minutes, the seat of my pants was wet. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my contacts. I called the first number. "Hello." A groggy voice. "Leon. It's me. Chen Ku." "Whoa. Chen Ku. What the hell? It's so late. Can I crash at your place for a few days?" I said. Li Wei kicked me out. 3 seconds of silence. Then Leon cursed. "Don't move. I'm coming to get you." I sat on the steps and waited. The streetlights in the complex illuminated a few osmanthus trees, their leaves deep green. In 2 months, they'd bloom. Last fall, Li Wei had stood under them taking pictures, saying they smelled wonderful, pulling me in to pose with her. Was that photo still on her phone, or had she deleted it? I didn't know. 20 minutes later, Liang's car pulled up at the gate. I stood up, walked over, and opened the door. He looked at my pajamas and didn't say a word. He just reached over and patted my shoulder. "Get in. You're staying with me." I got in the passenger seat and buckled up. As the car pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror at the building. My home for 3 years. 18th floor, middle unit. The light was still on. Li Wei was probably packing, or on the phone, or thinking about how to handle the divorce with her lawyer tomorrow. Liang, I said. Got a cigarette. He glanced at me, then pulled a pack from the glove box and handed it over. I lit one, took a drag, and coughed. I didn't really smoke. But that night, I smoked half a pack. Between the embers glow, one thought burned in my mind. That tech solution. Every page, every line of code, every algorithm. I wrote it all. Li Wei, when you kicked me out, did you ever stop to think that your $33 million contract weighed half as much as my hand? The streetlights flashed past one after another, like a river of light. I stubbed out the cigarette in the ashtray, closed my eyes, and leaned back in my seat. 3 days. Give me 3 days. Liang's couch was soft, but I couldn't sleep. The first night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every image on a loop. The Peninsula Hotel's lights, Li Wei smiling on stage, her cold eyes when she told me I didn't belong, the curl of smoke from Zhao Jianming's cigarette in the hallway. I broke each detail apart, chewed it, swallowed it. A sour bitterness rose in my stomach. The next day, Liang took the day off to stay with me. He ordered 2 bowls of beef noodles. We sat in his tiny living room, slurping. I had no appetite. I poked at the noodles with my chopsticks, watching them swirl in the broth. Chen Ku. Liang set his chopsticks down. What happened between you guys? She wasn't like that before. She really wasn't like that before. We got married the 3rd year after graduation. Simple ceremony. Rented wedding dress. Reception at an ordinary hotel. Li Wei was so happy that day, flying around the room, grabbing all her girlfriends and telling them, "This is my husband, Chen Ku. He writes amazing code." Back then, her eyes had been full of light, full of pride. When did that light begin to fade? Probably 3 years ago, when she landed her first big deal on her own. She came home and slapped the contract on the table, her face flushed with excitement. "Chen Ku, look, I closed it myself. A $2 million deal." I spun her around 3 times, saying, "Honey, you're amazing." She laughed, so happy. But that night, she said something that caught me off guard. "Chen Ku, sometimes you need to learn to take a step forward. No matter how good your tech is, hiding behind a computer is passive." I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Then she got busier, promoted to VP, then CEO. Our business expanded from local to national, then international. The people she met grew more important. The brands she wore grew more expensive. She came home later and later. I started cooking, doing laundry, handling the utilities. She'd occasionally come home for a meal, eat quickly, and head out again. I thought it was just a division of labor. One charging ahead, the other holding the fort. Mutual support. Now I realized, in her eyes, there was no division anymore. There was only, "You're not good enough." On the 3rd morning, I decided to go back to the old apartment. My ID and driver's license were still there. I needed them for renting a place and finding a job. I told Liang, borrowed one of his t-shirts, and took a cab back. The elevator rose to the 18th floor. I stood at the door and rang the bell. No answer. I knocked. Silence. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. She was probably at the office. I crouched down and checked the potted plants by the shoe cabinet. We used to keep a spare key under one of them, in case we locked ourselves out. My fingers found it. Still there. I pulled it out, inserted it in the lock, and turned. The door opened. The apartment was emptier than I'd expected. The contract papers from the coffee table were gone. The photo of us by the TV was gone too. I went into the bedroom and looked in the closet. My clothes were still there, but Li Wei's side was mostly empty. She'd taken some of her things and left the rest. I went to the nightstand to look for my ID. When I opened the drawer, it was empty, but there was a paper at the bottom. I pulled it out. A sticky note with a few hasty words. "Chen Ku, come back to sign when you can. I've left your things." I recognized the note. It was on company stationery with the logo. She couldn't even be bothered to write me a proper message. I set the note on the table and went to the study to search for my documents. Our shared desk was now piled high with messy files. Next to the printer were a few wastebaskets. I found my driver's license in the bottom drawer. As I was about to leave, my foot kicked the large trash can against the wall. It didn't have a liner. It was filled with shredded paper and discarded documents. I bent down to look. On top was a piece of paper with a familiar layout. The header and footer template from the contract's technical appendix. I pulled it out. It showed the project title and the listed leads. Li Wei, Zhao Jianming. I was about to toss it back when I turned it over. On the back, another sheet was stuck. I peeled it off, smoothed it out, and read 2 lines that I froze. It was an old agreement, the first 3 pages, slightly wrinkled, with folded corners. I recognized it immediately. It was the original framework agreement I drafted for this tech solution 3 years ago, when we were trying to partner with a supplier on joint development. The deal had fallen through due to the supplier's funding issues, and the agreement was shelved. But that agreement contained the prototype design for the entire architecture I'd later built. I crouched next to the trash can and turned it upside down. Shredded paper and discarded printouts scattered across the floor. But the most important thing I found was at the very bottom. Another manila envelope. I opened it. Inside was a comparison draft of the contract appendix. Revisions between the old version and the new. The red marks were dense. Every change had a modifier and date next to it. From the original draft 3 years ago to the final version this year. The core architecture was almost entirely preserved, only optimized, and on every revision note. The original modifier was my employee code, CK, but next to it, a handwritten annotation read, Inventorship transferred to Li Wei, Zhao Jiaming. The date of the annotation was 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Exactly when Li Wei had asked me to step back into an advisory role. She said she wanted me to rest. I'd been touched, thinking she cared about my exhaustion. Now I understood. She'd asked me to step back so she could remove my name from every document. That I sat on the floor of the study with those papers in my hands for a full 20 minutes. My fingers, gripping the edges of the sheets, had gone numb. Sunlight streamed through the blinds in thin beams. Dust dancing in the light. My mind raced. That $33 million contract, the entire core solution, was based on the prototype I'd written 3 years ago. ATL had chosen us because of the stability and advancement of that underlying architecture. 6 months before signing, Li Wei and Zhao Jiaming had altered the inventorship records. But there was one thing they didn't know. I'd written that architecture alone, over 4 months, often until 3 or 4 a.m. And in the process, I'd embedded a hidden signature in every layer of logic. A series of seemingly meaningless timestamp and checksum combinations, distributed across every key module of the system. It was a habit of mine, like an artist signing the corner of a canvas. Not for any reason, just a habit. And those fingerprint codes hadn't been caught during the inventorship transfer. The codes had no functional impact at the system level. Without the original design files, no one would even know they existed. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf. At the very bottom corner, tucked away, was an old hard drive covered in dust, the backup of my original development environment from 3 years ago. Before I changed computers, I pulled it out, dusted it off, and put it in my pocket. Before leaving the old apartment, I took one last look at the study. The desk was a mess, but my things had mostly been cleared out. Only a few dusty tech books and a half-empty pen box remained. I unplugged the desk lamp and put it back in place. Then I closed the door and walked out. But before the door shut, I paused. I remembered Li Wei standing here, telling me I didn't belong. She'd probably thought everything was settled by then. Contract signed, money coming in, shareholders happy, her position in the industry secured. As for that useless husband who wrote code, it just kick him out. She didn't know that the person she kicked out held the most important key of all, back at Liang's place. I connected the old hard drive to his laptop, booted it up, scanned, recovered the partitions. The 3-year-old development environment was intact, all source files, logs, design records, and the complete original agreement. I opened a file and scrolled down to the core architecture modules. At lines 1372, 2804, 3901, and 5708, I found the 4 fingerprint codes. Each was a 12-character mixed encoding, distributed across different functional nodes. They also had a progressive logical relationship. If extracted and converted with my original key, they formed a complete timestamp chain proving the original creation date and sole authorship. I copied those fingerprints and compared them to the corresponding modules in this year's contract appendix. Exact match. The codes had been preserved intact through every system iteration because they'd never been manually modified. Li Wei and Zhao Jiaming had changed the names on the documents, but they couldn't touch the fingerprints inside the code. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. My phone buzzed. Liang had sent a message. Chen-Ku, get your documents. I replied. Got them. And something else. What? Something that'll let me turn the tables. After sending that, I dialed a number. It rang 3 times before picking up. Old Zheng. It's Chen-Ku. On the other end was Zheng Xiaoming. the company's former VP of technology. He'd been pushed out last year after clashing with Zhao Jiaming. When he left, I'd taken him to dinner. He'd said, "Chen Ku, watch your back. Zhao Jiaming is not a good person." I hadn't thought much of it. "Chen Ku, why are you calling?" Old Zheng's voice was surprised. "I heard about you and Li Wei." "Old Zheng." I lowered my voice. "I want to ask you something. 6 months ago, when Li Wei and Zhao Jiaming did that inventorship transfer to you remember the internal approval form? A few seconds of silence. Then Old Zheng said, "I do. They asked me to sign it. I read it and refused. I told Li Wei it was wrong." Chen Ku was the original author. She called me into her office and talked to me for an hour. Told me to get with the program. I didn't. They took me off tech and shuffled me to logistics. I quit. "Did your refusal leave any record on the form?" "Yes." I wrote a comment. "Inventorship is in dispute. Original designer's confirmation required." Old Zheng paused. "Chen Ku. I took a photo of that. Do you want it? I gripped the phone a little tighter. "Old Zheng, send it to me." "All right." He paused again, his tone turning serious. "Chen Ku, you're going to make a move, aren't you? If you need me to testify, I'm there. We hung up. I looked at the photo on my screen, uploaded from the cloud. Old Zheng's handwritten note on the internal approval form. Clear as day. Another piece of solid evidence. 3 days ago, I'd been kicked out of my home with nothing but pajamas and a few $100s. 3 days later, I sat on my friend's couch with enough evidence to overturn the whole case. In the reflection of my phone screen, I saw my own face. 3 days without sleep. Dark circles under my eyes. But there was something burning in them. Li Wei, you forgot to thank me at your celebration banquet. That's fine. Soon, I'll make sure everyone knows that on every single page of your $33 million, my name belongs. I opened my laptop and started drafting the lawyer's letter. The keyboard clacked fast and hard. Outside, the night was dark, but I could feel the dawn coming. I didn't sleep for the next 2 days. Or rather, I napped on Liang's couch for maybe 5 hours total. I organized every document from the last 3 years into a comprehensive timeline. The original draft dates of the tech solution. The logs of every version iteration. Server operation records. Old Zheng's refusal note. The raw fingerprint code data from the hard drive. Everything was laid out in black and white. When Tang Ruo arrived, I spread it all across the table like a deck of cards. Tang Ruo was an intellectual property lawyer recommended by a college friend. Early 30s. Short hair, round glasses, and a measured way of speaking. She sat down, flipped through my materials, and her expression shifted from casual to focused. Then from focused to something like excitement. When she got to the fingerprint code comparison table, she stopped and looked up at me. "This signature design. You have development logs to back it up?" "Yes." I pulled a printout from the folder. 3 years of daily work records. I backed them up to my personal cloud. Every module I wrote, every interface I tweaked, every algorithm I optimized. All time-stamped. Also, the system logs on that old hard drive are accurate to the minute. Tang Ruo flipped through the logs, then closed the entire folder, leaned back in her chair, and looked at me. "Chen Ku, this case is solid. Do you know how solid? Solid enough that opposing counsel will recommend settlement the moment they see my first evidence list." She paused. "But you need to think this through. If this goes public, your ex-wife's reputation will be destroyed. Not just hers. The whole company will be affected. Are you sure you want to go down this path? I gathered the documents, stacking them neatly back into the folder. A mess. "Tang, do you want to know what she said to me before she kicked me out?" Tang Ruo raised an eyebrow. "She said I didn't belong at her level anymore. She stood on that stage celebrating a deal. And didn't mention my name once. She took the solution I wrote, signed a $33 million contract, and then erased my name from the files, replacing it with hers and Zhao Jiaming's. You ask if I'm sure I met her eyes. I don't ask if she deserves it. I ask if I deserve it." Tang Ruo looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked up the folder and stood. "All right. I'll take the materials and draft the complaint. Don't engage with them directly. Let the legal process handle it." She stopped at the door and turned back. "One more thing. That idea of approaching the buyer under a pseudonym as a system maintenance consultant. Hold off on that. After the complaint is filed, the buyer will receive a copy of our lawyer's letter. At that point, you'll have more weight speaking as the patent owner than as a consultant." "Understood." After Tang Ruo left, I sat at Liang's kitchen table and stared out at the skyline. The layers of the city stretched out before me. In the distance, the silver high-rise where Li Wei's company was headquartered gleamed in the afternoon sun. She was probably sitting in her spacious CEO office right now, reviewing post-deal logistics on her computer. She probably thought I was curled up somewhere licking my wounds like a kicked old dog. She didn't imagine that old dog had a bone in his mouth, that I unlocked my phone and opened Li Wei's social media feed. She posted a photo yesterday, a selfie in her office with the city skyline behind her and a coffee cup in hand. The caption read, "33 million isn't the end. It's a new beginning. Grateful to the team. Moving forward, 60 plus likes." Zhao Jianming was at the top of the list, commenting, "Big vision. Ms. Li, proud to work with you." I stared at the post for a few seconds, then locked the screen. I didn't block her, didn't mute her. I'd keep all her posts. Watch her walk down, step by step. From the top point, one more day passed. Tang Rua sent me the draft complaint for review. I read it line by line, made a few technical wording changes, and replied, "Approved," that same day. As the independent original creator of the tech solution, I sent a formal lawyer's letter to ATL Group's China representative office, courteously worded, but clear. The technical solution your company has contracted is the subject of an intellectual property dispute. Legal proceedings have been initiated by our side. Please be advised. After hitting send, I leaned back and rubbed my brow. My phone buzzed. It was Chun Yi, a young engineer I'd mentored at the company. "Good kid. Straight shooter. Chen Ku." His voice was low. "I heard what happened. Ms. Li sent out an internal notice saying you'd resigned and all your access was revoked. The admin team already deleted your tech backend account, just as expected." She was erasing every trace of me. "Chen Yi," I said, "who has admin access to the source code repository now?" Zhao Jianming locked it down himself. He branched the original repo and changed the author attributions to himself and Li Wei. But Chen Yi paused. "The core modules you wrote are too complex." He didn't dare mess with them. He had two guys go through and strip your name out of the comments. But the code itself, the logic structure, the algorithms, he can't touch. The guys who did it told me they got hand cramps deleting your name from every block, because every line looked like your handiwork. A faint smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Chen Yi, do me a favor. Name it. Get screenshots of the key pages from Zhao Jianming's branched, specifically the commit logs where he changed author attributions. I don't need the whole repo, just the visible public log entries. No problem. I saw those changes when they happened. I've already got the screenshots." We hung up. I added Chun Yi's screenshots to my folder. Zhao Jianming's operations were crystal clear. Original author CK bulk replaced with Zhao Jianming. Li Wei. The timestamp showed the changes were made 2 months before the contract signing, together with old Zheng's refusal note, the fingerprint code comparison, and the development timeline. This formed a complete, unbroken chain of evidence. Then I thought of one more thing. I scrolled through my contacts and found a number I hadn't called in a long time. Chun Kiming, our earliest angel investor. Back when Li Wei couldn't even afford office space, he'd put in the first round of funding. As the company grew, he'd stepped back from operations, keeping only a small stake. He and I had always gotten along. He respected my technical abilities and had told me more than once that I was the company's real foundation. I hesitated. Then I dialed. "Chen Ku." Chun Kiming's voice was surprised. "Long time no see. I heard your company just closed a huge deal." "Hey, you sound hoarse. Mr. Chun, I need to tell you something." I took a breath. "You're still a shareholder, right? Then you have a right to know what I'm about to say." I laid out the whole story from start to finish, as concisely as I could. Chun Kiming listened in total silence, only his breathing audible. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he swore under his breath. "That woman." His voice was low. "Chen Ku, the evidence you have. I in court. She can't fight it. You make this decision, and I support you. If you need me to do anything at the shareholder level, you say the word." "Not yet. But after the complaint is officially filed, I may need your signature as a witness on some documents." "Done." He paused. "Chen Ku, I've always felt the company couldn't do without you. She doesn't understand tech. Zhao Jianming is a paper tiger. It's easy to sign a $33 million deal, but if the delivery falls apart, the client will walk. You're more clear-headed than either of them." After we hung up, I stepped out onto Liang's balcony. The October evening wind was already cool, carrying a sharp clarity that stung my face. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Traffic merged into rivers of light. Liang came out and handed me a beer. I popped the tab and took a sip. "How's it going?" he asked. "Almost there," I said. "Lawyer says the complaint goes to court tomorrow. Copies go to Li Wei's company, ATL China. and the relevant industry regulators. Liang leaned against the railing, looking at the distant CBD towers. What do you think her face will look like when she gets the lawyer's letter? I took another sip and thought about it. Surprised, I said. She probably thinks I'm out of the game. She won't expect me to bite back. But she won't panic right away. She'll try to pass the blame first. She'll call Zhao Jiaming. And that guy's slipperier than anyone. He'll tell her to play it cool. Don't admit anything. Drag it out. She won't panic until she sees there's no way to drag it out. Will you go soft? I turned to look at Liang. The concern in his eyes was genuine. Liang, I said, when she kicked me out, I was in my pajamas, barefoot, for $100 in my bank account. That night, I sat on your steps for over an hour before I could bring myself to knock on your door, because I didn't know where else to go. I borrowed a cigarette from you and coughed my lungs out. Those things that I'll never forget them. I finished the beer, crushed the empty can, and tossed it in the trash. No, I won't go soft. She didn't go soft when she erased my name. Neither will I. Liang patted my shoulder. He didn't say anything else. The wind blew up from the street, carrying the smell of barbecue smoke. I took a deep breath. Charcoal and cumin. Suddenly, I was hungry. I hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. My stomach finally remembered what it was for. Come on. I tossed the empty can. Let's go get some noodles. We walked into the noodle shop downstairs. My phone buzzed. Tang Ruo. Complaint filed with the court. Lawyer's letter sent today. The other party will receive it tomorrow morning. Leave the rest to me. I typed. Understood. I pulled out a plastic chair and sat down. The owner brought over a steaming bowl of beef noodles, cilantro, and chili oil floating on top. The aroma filling the air. I picked up my chopsticks, lifted a tangle of noodles, and blew on them. The first bite scalded my tongue, but the warmth spread all the way down my throat and through my whole body. Tomorrow. Li Wei would receive the lawyer's letter. She'd see the name Chen Ku on the plaintiff's line. She might remember the last words I said to her that night at the door. I'd stopped, turned, and looked at her. Li Wei, are you sure? Her answer was, yes. Go. Good. As long as you're sure. I buried my face in the noodles, ate until the bowl was empty, and drank the broth. I looked up at the clock on the wall. 9:14 p.m. The night was still long, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The morning after the lawyer's letter was sent, I knew Li Wei had received it. At 10:43 a.m., she texted me. Our chat history had been frozen for 5 days. Her last message was from the night of the banquet. Go home first. I have something to tell you. I'd never replied. Now, the dormant chat lit up with just 4 words. Chen Ku, are you insane? I didn't reply. She sent another. Where are you? Let's talk in person. Still no reply. Then the call came. I watched her name flash on the screen. I hit mute, turned the phone face down on the table, and continued my call with Tang Ruo. Discussing next Wednesday's evidence exchange, Tang Ruo said, they'll try to reach a private settlement with you. They'll offer terms to get you to drop the suit. Be prepared that the offers might be tempting. No terms. I said, let the legal process run its course. Good. I'll arrange the final evidence submission before the trial. By the way, has ATL responded. They sent an email yesterday. Said they'd received our notice and would monitor the legal outcome while not adjusting existing arrangements for now. Conservative wording, but cleared they're waiting to see. If I win, they'll reassess the supplier relationship for future maintenance and expansion. Perfect. Tang Ruo's voice had a hint of a smile. Let them watch you win. I hung up and flipped my phone over. 7 missed calls. All from Li Wei. New messages. The last one read, Chen Ku, don't go too far. The company's interests are your interests too. Taking this to court helps no one. I stared at that message for a long time. The company's interests are your interests too. She still didn't realize that the company and her were no longer the same thing. From the moment she erased my name from the solution, this company meant only one thing to me. Defendant. In the afternoon, Zhao Jiaming called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I played it. His voice as slick as ever, dripping with business charm. Chen Ku, buddy, let's talk it out. You're a company veteran, and no need to make this ugly. Tell me what you want. We'll discuss it behind closed doors. Why drag it to court? Name your price. We'll do our best. I listened, smiled, and deleted it. Name your price. He thought I wanted money. He thought the whole fight was just about squeezing a few extra million. People like Zhao Jiaming never understand what money can't buy. He'd climbed up on relationships, smooth talk, and scheming. He believed every deal had a number. That's why he'd never understand that for some people. When you take their dignity, no amount of money can fill the hole. Wednesday morning, Tang Ruo submitted the complete evidence package to the court. I sent a more detailed explanatory letter to ATL China as the independent creator and actual rights holder, with supporting evidence attachments. 4 hours later, ATL responded. More detailed this time. Their tech lead called me directly. Mr. Chun, I'm Lin Yu, ATL China Technical Director. We've reviewed your materials internally. A few points I'd like to confirm. Go ahead. The fingerprint code data you provided. We've located the corresponding positions in the delivered source code. I need to confirm. Was this code embedded before delivery or added afterward, before delivery? I said, embedded in the initial version 3 years ago. You can verify the version hash against the original on my old hard drive. It's a perfect match. A pause. Then, Mr. Chun, our preliminary assessment is that your claim has significant credibility. Pending the court's final ruling, we will suspend all further payments to the existing partner and await the legal outcome. I sat for a moment after the call, then sent the recording transcript to Tang Ruo. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a message. Good. The deal's remaining payment is still with ATL. They're blocking the cash flow. The timing is perfect. I set my phone down, stood up, and stretched my stiff shoulders. Liang was at work. The apartment was quiet, broken only by occasional birdsong outside the window. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the window, drinking slowly. In the past 4 days, I'd forced myself to do so much. Organizing evidence, contacting lawyers, steadying my nerves, staying clear-headed. Now everything was moving forward, and there was finally a little room to breathe. I set the glass down and leaned against the windowsill, letting my gaze drift over the street below. My mind drifted to Li Wei's face. Not the triumphant, glowing Li Wei from the banquet. Not the cold, heartless Li Wei from the night of the divorce. I thought of the Li Wei from much earlier, in our first year of business. We'd pulled an all-nighter in our rented office, racing to finish a proposal. She'd fallen asleep on my shoulder, drooling onto my shirt. I looked down at her. Her long lashes, her slightly parted lips, her body curled into a small, exhausted ball. I'd thought, this is it. This is my whole life. Guarding this girl, writing code forever. It's worth it. Where did that girl go? Did ambition slowly eat her? Or did I spoil her too much? I didn't know. But I knew that what she did, erasing my name from that contract, wasn't impulsive. Old Zheng's refusal note was dated 6 months ago. She'd been planning this for at least half a year. 6 months ago, when she asked me to step back into an advisory role, she'd already been paving the way. She'd pretended everything was normal. Eating with me, watching TV together, planning weekend trips. All her normal behavior was an act. For half a year, when I realized that, my hand slowly tightened around the glass. The water sloshed, splashing a few drops onto the windowsill. 7 years of love. She'd spent 6 months cutting the cord, and in one night, 3 sentences had thrown me out. She probably thought it was clean and efficient. Change the names on the contract. Get the $33 million deal. Ditch the husband, who didn't measure up. 3 things done at once. Efficient. Just like a successful woman should be. The one thing she didn't account for was that I could still fight back. In the afternoon, Tang Ruo called, her voice more urgent than usual. Chenku. New development. Opposing counsel has filed an emergency motion to postpone the trial date, citing the need for more time to prepare their response. It's a stall tactic. They want time to find weaknesses or push for an out-of-court settlement. What do you think? How long can they drag it out? A couple of weeks. At most, let them. I said, the longer it drags, the more internal pressure they'll face. Zhao Jiaming can't hold his nerve. Give him enough time, and he'll make a mistake. All right, I'll work at that pace. Also, Tang Ruo paused. Your ex-wife called my office this morning. She wanted to meet in person. I declined and told her to use formal channels. She sounded unstable. I know. I said, let her come. After the call, I set the phone down and sat back on the couch, staring at the blank wall across from me. The wallpaper was old, peeling at the edges. The room was quiet. So quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the branches. The sky began to darken. Evening light slanted through the window, stretching long shadows across the wooden floor. I watched those shadows creep from one end to the other, like time itself flowing away. Li Wei, when you come to see me, what will you say? That you're sorry, that we should talk, that the company needs me, that we had no children. She never talked about the miscarriage again. I'd held her hand and said it was okay. We'd try again. She didn't answer, just closed her eyes and turned her face away. I didn't know what she was thinking then. Maybe she was thinking, a child with this coding man isn't good enough. I shook off the thought. I reached under the coffee table for Liang's pack of cigarettes, pulled one out, and lit it. The smoke curled up and was scattered by the breeze from the window crack. Tomorrow was the next round. I'd be ready for her. While the legal process moved forward, I made a decision to attend ATL's final delivery review meeting. The review was originally an internal event hosted by Li Wei's company inviting the buyer to inspect system deployment, discuss future maintenance, and present a showcase of the project's achievements. Essentially, another celebration banquet. It was scheduled at a 5-star hotel in the city center. 1 week before the court date, through ATL's Lin Yu, I secured a seat as a technical advisor. Lin Yu knew about the lawsuit but didn't pry that. He simply said, "If you'd like to attend, you're welcome." The afternoon of the review, I wore a dark blue suit another one Li Wei had bought me last year. She'd said, "You need to look presentable when you meet people." I'd worn it twice, once to an industry event, and once to her father's funeral. I'd grabbed it when I went back to the old apartment. Liang had pressed it for me. Now it fit well, the fabric sharp against my shoulders. I paused in front of the mirror as I tied my tie. The man looking back was leaner, jawline more defined, with a sharp glint in his eyes. He was nothing like the domestic support who'd been cooking, cleaning, and paying bills half a year ago. Looking good. Chen Ku. Liang leaned against the doorway, chewing gum. "Go show them what a comeback looks like." I clapped his shoulder and walked out. The conference room was beautifully arranged. Long tables draped in white cloth, flowers and bottled water at each seat. A large screen looping the project's promotional video. ATL had sent 6 people, led by Lin Yu. Seated at the head table, Li Wei's side was even larger. Sales, marketing, tech, legal. 2 full rows of people. When I walked into the room, the girl at the registration desk glanced at me and didn't recognize me. I said, "Technical advisor, Chen Ku." She scanned the list, found my name, with a note reading ATL invited guest. She hesitated, then let me in. I took a seat in the back. In front of me were Li Wei's people. They didn't look back. On the screen, the presentation switched to the technical solution overview. The header listed project leads. Li Wei, Zhao Jiaming. Slide after slide. Each page of technical content came from my hands. Li Wei handled the first half of the meeting. She wore a crimson suit, stood tall, and spoke clearly. She was genuinely good at this. She covered system architecture, module functions, deployment progress, test data, clear and well supported. When ATL's tech team asked a few specialized questions, she motioned for Zhao Jiaming to answer. He stood up, prepared. The answers were largely from the FAQ appendix of my original solution, just phrased in his style. His eyes scanned the room. They landed on me. They stopped for just a second. He recognized me. Zhao Jiaming's smile froze, then quickly recovered. But I saw his gaze shift from calm to alert. He started glancing at Li Wei unconsciously. Li Wei was quietly talking with Lin Yu and didn't notice anything unusual when the presentation reached the detailed tech appendix. I stood up. The scrape of my chair against the floor wasn't loud, but in the quiet conference room, it was enough to make the people in the front rows turn around. Zhao Jiaming's words died in his throat. Li Wei looked up, her gaze traveling through the rows of people to land on me. Her pupils contracted. She froze like someone had hit pause. I walked up the side aisle, my leather shoes barely making a sound on the carpet. When I reached the front, I pulled a folder from my inner pocket, opened it to the first page. Mr. Lin. I addressed Lin Yu. Distinguished experts from ATL, sorry to take a moment of your time. I'd like to add some background information on the technical solution shown in today's presentation. Lin Yu nodded. Beside him, a blonde foreigner adjusted his glasses, looking interested. "The technical appendix in your hand." I held up my folder. "I have a comparison document here. On the left is the version presented today. On the right is the original version from 3 years ago. You'll notice that over 95% of the core architecture, algorithms, and even parameter configurations are copied verbatim. The original author's surname is Chun, not Li, not Zhao." The room went silent, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. I turned to the second page, showing screenshots of the fingerprint code positions. In addition, there are 4 hidden timestamp checksums embedded in the system's underlying modules, placed by the original author during development. Every version shown in today's presentation contains these 4 checksums intact. I have the original development environment logs for comparison. Chun K. Li Wei's voice cut through sharp, shrill. What do you think you're doing? This is an internal review. You. She stood up. Her face flushed red, but her voice was trembling. The calm composure she'd always wielded was gone. I spread the folder open in front of her and pulled out the last sheet. Ms. Lee. This is a copy of the court's acceptance notification and a summary of the evidence. Additionally, this is the formal intellectual property claim sent to your company and ATL. The pages landed on the table with a soft thwack. Zhao Jianming slumped back in his chair. The color drained from his face. His colleague from legal leaned over, took a look, and also turned pale. Whispers broke out. Li Wei stood frozen, one hand gripping the table edge. Her lips pressed together. Her breathing was rapid. She maintained her posture, like she wanted to say something. But nothing came out. I turned to ATL's side. Mr. Lin. The technical plan presented today is the subject of a major intellectual property dispute. Legal proceedings have already been initiated. The materials are in your hands. Before the court issues a final ruling, I recommend that ATL reassess the legality and stability of your current contractual framework. Lin Yu picked up the court document, flipped through 2 pages, and closed it. He nodded at me. Mr. Chun. Noted. Today's review will be adjourned. Further arrangements will be made after the legal process progresses. He stood. His ATL team rose with him. The 3 foreign representatives exchanged glances after understanding the situation. One of them shrugged, picked up his briefcase, and walked out. Li Wei stepped forward. Mr. Lin. Please. Let me explain. Lin Yu paused at the door and turned back. His expression was polite but distant. Ms. Lee, business partnerships are built on trust. We need to confirm that the foundation is solid. Please understand. He left. The door closed. The room fell into frozen silence. Li Wei stood in front of the dark projection screen, her chest heaving. Zhao Jianming scrambled to his feet, opened his mouth to speak, but legal counsel grabbed his shoulder, muttering, "Don't. It's too late." I closed my folder and walked toward the exit. As I passed Li Wei, she suddenly reached out and grabbed my arm. Hard. Her nails dug through my suit jacket into my skin. "Chinku." Her voice was low, barely audible, but taut as a breaking wire. "You did this on purpose. You came here to destroy me." I looked down at her hand. That hand had once intertwined with mine at our wedding. It had once placed a bowl of hot soup on my desk when I worked late. Now it gripped me, knuckles white, veins bulging. Like a drowning person clutching at a last straw. Li Wei. I looked at her. "When you erased my name, did you ever think that every word on those pages, every line of code, every algorithm framework that was typed by these hands, one character at a time?" She froze. I peeled her fingers off, one by one, and freed my arm. I stepped back half a step. By the time you came begging. I wasn't there. When you erased my name. I wasn't there. When you kicked me out. I wasn't there. The person standing before you now is the one you threw away, rebuilt from the dignity you discarded. Her lips trembled. Something glistened in her eyes, but she wouldn't let it fall. She let go of my arm and stood there like a tree uprooted but not yet fallen. I didn't look back. I walked out of the conference room. The hallway was bright. Outside, the city was bathed in sunset. A sea of orange clouds coloring the glass towers. My phone buzzed. "Tang Ruo, heard you made quite a move today. See you in court." I typed 4 words. "See you in court." When I walked out of the hotel, the sun hung low on the horizon. Large, round, brighter than I'd ever seen it. I took a deep breath. The autumn air was crisp and clean. Behind me, the glass doors closed, cutting off all the noise and chaos. Everything inside stayed inside. I walked forward. My steps were lighter than when I'd arrived. 3 days after the review, Li Wei found my place. That evening, I'd just finished moving the last box of books into my new apartment. I sat on the living room floor, catching my breath. Liang had helped me find this 1-bedroom. Small, but south-facing, clean, $2,200 a month. Just right for one person. I didn't have much. A few cardboard boxes scattered across the floor. Clothes not yet hung. Books stacked in a corner like a small mountain. When the knock came, I thought it was takeout. I stood up and opened the door. The hallway light was on. Li Wei stood outside in a black trench coat, her hair in a messy ponytail. No makeup. She looked thinner than 3 days ago. Cheekbones more prominent. Dark circles under her eyes. I didn't invite her in. I didn't close the door. "How did you find this place?" I called Liang. Her voice was raspy. It took me half an hour to beg him to tell me. I leaned against the doorframe and looked at her. The wind from the stairwell whipped a few strands of hair across her face. She brushed them away, her fingers shaking. "Chinku." Her voice was rough. "Can we talk inside?" It's cold out here. I stepped aside. She walked in and stood in the middle of the living room, taking in the boxes and scattered belongings. Her eyes flickered. Then she sat on the couch. The only spot without something on it. I pulled up a chair and sat across from her. I left the main light on. Bright, so every expression was visible. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "The company is about to collapse. ATL stopped payment. The bank lowered our credit line after hearing about the lawsuit. 2 suppliers cut us off. Zhao Jiaming handed in his resignation yesterday." I listened. I didn't speak. The board had an emergency meeting. Her voice grew quieter. Chen Qiming said I had to resolve the IP issue within 2 weeks, or they'd start removal proceedings. I built this company with my own hands over 5 years. Now they want me out. She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed, a sheen of moisture held back by sheer will. "Chen Ku, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have done what I did. But can you, please, for the sake of those 7 years, drop the lawsuit? I'll sign a new agreement with you. I'll restore your credit. You can have the CTO position if you come back. I'll accept whatever terms. Just don't let the company die." I looked into her eyes. A deep exhaustion settled in my bones, not from working late, but from the marrow outward. 7 years of emotion, trust, and memory, reduced to her sitting across from me, bargaining. Li Wei. My voice was calm. "6 months ago, when you signed that internal approval form transferring inventorship, did it ever occur to you to call me and ask?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. No, you didn't. I said. "You buried old Zhang's refusal note. You deleted my operation records from the system logs. You had Chun Yi and the others go through and scrub my name from the comments. You did 6 months of groundwork. Every step was calculated. You missed only one thing. You never thought I'd left fingerprints in the code." She dropped her head, hands clasped on her knees, knuckles white. "Now you come to me, talking about 7 years of love." I leaned forward. Li Wei, you're the one who tore up those 7 years. On the night you kicked me out. 7 years was worth 3 sentences. Sign it. You don't belong. Go. Now you come to me about love. What love? The love of erasing my name while you kicked me out. The love of signing a $33 million deal and not even saying thank you. She looked up suddenly. The tears spilled over. "Chen Ku, when I said that night I was out of my mind. I thought if I signed this deal, I'd have made it. I thought you were holding me back. I thought I could do it alone. But I was wrong. The people I thought would help me, they ran faster than anyone. Zhao Jiaming sent me an email on his way out the door. Ms. Li, I've made up my mind." Then he disappeared. That partner who swore up and down about the company, he didn't even leave a decent goodbye. She covered her face, her shoulders shaking. "Chen Ku, yell at me. Hit me. I know what I did. But please, drop the suit. There are dozens of people waiting for paychecks. Last month I was on stage talking about a 100-year company. This month I'm begging investors to take it off my hands. I don't matter. But the people who've been with me for 4 or 5 years, they don't deserve this." The apartment was quiet, broken only by her sobs and the occasional passing car outside. I stood up, walked to the water cooler, and poured a glass of warm water. I set it on the coffee table in front of her. She picked it up and took a sip. Her fingers were still shaking. She looked up at me, the stubbornness in her eyes finally crumbling. Wet, muddy, broken. She set the glass down. Then, all at once, she slipped off the couch and crouched at my feet, tilting her face up to look at me. Tears ran down her cheeks and soaked into her collar. "Chen Ku, please." Those 3 words came out shattered, hoarse, her dignity falling apart. The woman who'd smiled on stage at the Peninsula Hotel was now crouched on the floor of a rented apartment, looking up at the husband she'd thrown out, begging. I looked down at her. The pose was familiar. Years ago, when she was in the hospital with a fever and I was at her bedside, she'd looked up at me like that, clutching my hand, saying, "Chen Ku, don't go." Back then, her eyes were full of me, overflowing, like spring lakes holding all the light in the world. Now that lake was dry, cracked at the bottom, nothing left. I bent down, took her arm, and helped her back onto the couch. She was limp, like she had no bones. Collapsed against the backrest, face buried in her hands. Li Wei. I stood over her. "Listen to me." She lifted her face, tear-streaked, but her gaze was fixed on me. Like a prisoner awaiting sentence. "I'll talk to my lawyer. I'll ask her to slow the court schedule. But the credit you owe me. The inventorship must be corrected through proper channels. That is non-negotiable. As for the company's operations, I'll have Chen Qiming intervene to stabilize suppliers and employees first. As for whether you stay in the CEO's seat, that's up to the board." She stared, stunned like she hadn't expected any concession at all. A flicker of relief flashed across her face, quickly swallowed by something more complicated. She opened her mouth, her voice raspy. Chen-ku, thank you, don't thank me too soon. I said, this isn't for you. It's for the employees, for the people who stuck with us through the early years. They don't deserve to suffer for what you did. She nodded, tears coming again. Li Wei. One more thing. I sat back down across from her. I accept your apology. That doesn't mean I forgive you. Some things break and can't be put back together. After today, we go our separate ways. Company matters, that will settle them cleanly. Everything else off the table. She looked at me for a long moment. Her lips moved soundlessly. In the end, she stood up, picked up her bag, and walked toward the door. The threshold. She stopped, back still turned. Chen-ku. Her voice was barely a whisper. You once said that meeting someone who truly cares for you is a stroke of luck. I didn't think so then. Now I understand. She opened the door and walked into the hallway. The light flicked on, illuminating her thin silhouette as she moved step by step toward the stairwell. She didn't look back. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. Eyes shut. The apartment was quiet. The boxes were still scattered, books piled in a corner. I walked to the window and pushed it open, letting the cold air rush in, rippling the surface of the water in the glass on the table. In the distance, the city shimmered. Every light behind every window held its own story. I stood for a while, then pulled out my phone and called Tang. Are you O.ms? Tang. Slow down the pace of the lawsuit. Core demands remain unchanged. Inventorship must be restored. Compensation will be determined by the court, but I need some resources to handle the transition first. Give them a little time to breathe. Tang Ruo was silent for 2 seconds. You went soft, not soft. I looked out at the night. I'm not taking less than I'm owed, but I'm not going to wreck dozens of people's livelihoods just to settle a score. Save what can be saved. Hold accountable what must be held accountable. Tang Ruo let out a soft laugh. Chen-ku, you're a complicated guy, but find out I follow the client's wishes. I'll adjust the schedule. We'll go forward with evidence verification and inventorship correction first. Compensation claims can come later. Thank you. I hung up and stood by the window for a long time. The wind was cold against the back of my neck, but something heavy in my chest was slowly dissolving. Li Wei had come to me crying, saying every soft word she could. But that girl who'd once fallen asleep on my shoulder, she wasn't coming back. That girl who'd walked home with me to save $2 on bus fare, she wasn't coming back either. But that was okay. The Chen-ku standing at this window now. I'd rebuilt him myself. He wasn't perfect, but he was whole. He didn't need anyone else's name on a contract to prove his worth. I closed the window, crouched down, and started unpacking the boxes. As I set books one by one onto the shelf, my fingers traced the spines. A grounding, solid feeling, new life. Starting tonight. For real. The court's second pretrial hearing was held on a gray morning. I arrived 20 minutes early. Tang Ruo was already there, standing on the steps, flipping through documents. She saw me, closed the folder, and walked in with me. Li Wei changed lawyers. Tang Ruo said. Her original firm withdrew. She's using a small shop that specializes in labor disputes. Probably can't afford the big firms anymore. What about Zhao Jiaming? He's got his own lawyer. Not with Li Wei. Tang Ruo pushed up her glasses, a slight smile playing on her lips. Separate defense. Their partnership is basically dead. She was right. When we entered the mediation room, I saw Li Wei sitting on one side of the table, with a middle-aged male lawyer I'd never seen before. Average at best. Zhao Jiaming sat on the other side, several chairs away from her. They didn't make eye contact the entire time. The mediator opened with procedural remarks, then invited each side to state their positions. Li Wei's side spoke in low voices, her new lawyer's language hedging. They were willing to negotiate on inventorship. Zhao Jiaming's side was different from the start. His lawyer stood up and said, My client, Mr. Zhao Jiaming, acknowledges procedural irregularities in the inventorship matter. However, the primary decisions and execution were driven by Ms. Li Wei. My client was merely a supporting executor. He requests that the court differentiate their respective liabilities. The room fell silent for 2 seconds. Li Wei whipped her head around and stared at Zhao Jiaming. Her look of disbelief was like a bucket of cold water thrown in his face. Zhao Jiaming stared at the table. He wouldn't meet her eyes. I watched from across the table, taking it all in. Zhao Jiaming's move didn't surprise me. That's who he was. Sweet-talking, slippery, the first to run when trouble hit. When Li Wei brought him in, I thought he was a talent. Now I saw clearly. He was a parasitic vine, climbing the tallest tree. When the tree falls, he'd let go and find the next one. Li Wei's lawyer stood up to counter, arguing that Zhao Jiaming had actively participated and led the consolidation and reattribution of the tech solution. They started throwing old emails back and forth, each blaming the other. Zhao Jiaming's side even produced screenshots of internal emails claiming certain operational suggestions came directly from Li Wei. The mediator raised a hand and stopped the squabbling, requesting written submissions. As the pre-trial hearing ended, Li Wei stood up and walked out. As she passed Zhao Jiaming, she stopped and murmured something under her breath. Zhao Jiaming's expression flickered, but he didn't answer. He just lowered his head and hurried out of the mediation room. Tang Ruo packed her files and glanced at me. You saw that? They're done. I expected it. I stood up. People like Zhao Jiaming are never reliable. Li Wei finally figured that out. As we walked out of the courthouse, a light drizzle began to fall. Fine and dense, darkening the steps. I opened my umbrella. Li Wei stood under the awning by the entrance. No umbrella, hugging her arms and staring blankly at the rain. She saw me, hesitated, then walked over. Shinku. Raindrops speckled her shoulders. She shrank slightly. Can I talk to you for a minute? I held the umbrella over her. She was half a head shorter than me, standing under it and looking small. Did you hear what Zhao Jiaming said in there? Her voice was soft. He threw it all on me. He was the one who said we should use your tech. He said no one would check the names. I was out of my mind back then that he talked me into it. I said nothing. I listened. Today, he said I was the decision maker, but he was on that approval form too. He was part of every internal process. Now he's washed his hands clean and dumped all the blame on me. She paused, her voice rough. I used to think he was smarter than me. Better with people, able to help me go further. Now I realize, smart and reliable are two different things. The rain pattered on the umbrella. A soft hiss. I watched her profile as raindrops slid off the edge, splashing into tiny puddles. Li Wei. I said, Zhao Jiaming's actions will be judged by the court. He won't get off that easily. Those internal emails and approval forms all have his signature. He can't walk away clean. She looked up at me, tiny raindrops clinging to her lashes. Shinku, will you still help me? I'll help get things in order. Put the rights where they belong. I said, but this is where our relationship ends. Do you understand? She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I understand. The rain lightened. I closed the umbrella and stood with her on the courthouse steps. She gazed at the gray horizon and suddenly said, Shinku, I wonder sometimes, if I hadn't signed that deal. Or if I had, and just kept your name on it. What would things be like now? I followed her gaze to the distance, where the city was blurred by rain and car lights glowed warm in the damp air. I don't know. I said, but thinking about what's past doesn't help. She gave a small sound of acknowledgement. We stood in silence. After a while, her ride arrived. She said goodbye and got into the back seat. The car pulled away slowly, its taillights fading into a red in the rain. I stood there for a moment, opened my umbrella again, and turned toward the bus stop. The bottom of my pants were wet, the fabric cool against my ankles, but my steps were steady. A week later, the court delivered its first instance ruling. The inventorship correction was fully granted. The court ruled that Shinku was the original copyright holder of the technical solution. The defendant company must correct all patent filings and contract appendices within 7 business days. Compensation was deferred to the next hearing, pending overlap with company financial audits. But a week before the ruling was even issued, word had already spread across the industry. Zhao Jiaming's name became notorious. Several companies retracted their cooperation interest. His lawyer reached out to Tang Ruo, offering a settlement. A compensation payment in exchange for dropping personal claims against him. Li Wei's company. The board initiated internal accountability proceedings. Chen Keming called me and said they decided to ask her to step down as CEO while retaining shareholder status. The board would take interim management. He asked my opinion. I said, follow the company's rules. 2 days later, Li Wei sent me a WhatsApp message. All the tech credit has been corrected. Every page. I replied, good. She sent nothing further. I didn't reach out. That night, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, holding a cup of hot tea. The October wind was cool, rustling the leaves of the potted plant beside me. In the distance, the city's lights stretched out like a warm, golden sea. Somewhere in that sea was the office building where Li Wei's company was housed. By now, the nameplates on all the corrected pages. Frontispiece. Technical appendix. IP statement. Supplementary clauses that would read Chen Kud. That's how it should have been. From the moment I wrote the first line of code 3 years ago, those names should have been mine. But they'd been deleted, stolen, claimed by someone else. And now, finally, they were back where they belonged. I took a sip of tea. The temperature was just right. My phone buzzed. Lin Yu.Mr. Chun, we've seen the ruling. ATL has decided to restructure the partnership. We'd like to sign a new technical licensing and services agreement with you directly, replacing the previous partner. Are you interested? Yes, I said, but I have one condition. A few key engineers from the previous partner's tech team. I want them to stay on the project. Their technical work is solid. They were just caught up in management's failures. Lin Yu was quiet for 2 seconds, then laughed. Mr. Chun, your perspective now is bigger than 33 million. All right, we'll follow your suggestion. After the call, I stayed on the balcony a little longer. The wind made the clothes on the drying rack flap. Flop, flop, flop. I reached up and took down a shirt. Gray. Li Wei had bought it. I liked wearing it. She used to always say, Chen Ku, you look good in this. It was still a good shirt. Who bought it didn't matter anymore. I went inside, washed the teacup, and put it back in the cabinet. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and started a new document. The title line read, Chen Ku Studio, Technology Solutions IP Services. The cursor blinked after the title. Outside, the rain had stopped, the clouds parted, and a sliver of silver moonlight fell across the windowsill. I shut down the computer and went to bed. Tomorrow. A new contract to sign, a new team to lead, a new road to walk. But tonight, I just needed a good night's sleep. In my dreams, it was quiet. No one else was there. It was nice. When December's first snow fell, Chen Ku Studio officially opened for business. The office was in a creative park in the south of the city. A converted factory space with red brick walls, high ceilings, and large windows. A row of ginkgo trees stood outside, their leaves long gone, their bare branches dusted with a thin layer of snow that glittered in the winter sun. The heating was working well. I wore a thin sweater as I sat at my desk, 3 monitors in front of me running technical documents for 4 projects at once. Old Zheng had come on board. After the ruling, I'd reached out and asked if he'd be my VP of technology. He quit his job that same day and showed up at the creative park with his bag the next morning. The office was bigger than I'd expected. Old Zheng looked around and smiled. Chen Ku, how many people have you hired? 0.5 so far. Chen Yi brought 2 young engineers. There's also a girl doing algorithms. That's enough for now. We don't need to grow fast, just do good work. Old Zheng hung up his coat, walked to the window, and looked out at the snowy scene. When he turned around, he was smiling. Chen Ku, guess what? The day I left, Li Wei sent me a message. What did it say? She said, tell Chen Ku I wish him well. Old Zheng shrugged. I replied, tell him yourself. She didn't answer. I smiled and turned back to my code. Outside, a bird fluttered up from a branch, shaking off a puff of snow that scattered like crystals in the sunlight. Chen Ku Studio's first big project was ATL's follow-up maintenance contract. Lin Yu signed it personally. The deal was smaller than the original. But the terms were clean. The responsibilities clear. Every page read, Service Provider, Chen Ku Studio. Below it, my corporate seal. The day I got the contract, I took a photo and posted it on social media. No caption, just the image. Then I scrolled through my phone's photos and found a screenshot from 3 years ago. The old project, back when I was the only one writing code. The 2 images side by side told one story. From one person's keyboard to a whole team's operation. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. I didn't have it saved, but the string of digits was familiar. Li Wei's new number. She'd written. Saw your post. Congratulations. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the line for half a minute. Then I saved the number as Li and typed a reply. Thank you. Take care of yourself. I set the phone down and went back to the project meeting with Old Zheng. I didn't check my phone again that night. 2 weeks later, I received a paper envelope in the mail. Inside was a stack of documents, the confirmation of corrected inventorship, stamped with the company seal and Li Wei's signature. On the last page was a handwritten note. Chen Ku, all the documents are corrected. I've handed the company over to the board and stepped away. I've taken my mother back to live with me. You don't need to keep sending money. Thank you for covering her medical bills for all those months. I can never repay you, but I'll try. Wishing you well. I folded the note and slipped it into the notebook in my desk drawer. It was a gift from Liang, with new chapter stamped on the cover. Inside, he'd written, Chen Ku. Go get him. You deserve everything good. I closed the drawer and walked to the window. The snow was falling again. Thick, slow flakes settling on the ginkgo branches. A group of children were building a snowman in the courtyard. Their bright red and green coats dotting the white landscape. Their laughter filtered through the glass. Inside the studio, keyboards clacked. Old Zheng and Chun Yi were discussing interface protocols. The algorithm girl had her headphones on, humming while tuning a model. In the corner, the coffee machine gurgled, steam rising. I watched the snow for a while and thought back to the night I'd been kicked out. It had been winter then too. Though not as cold, but the chill that seeped into my bones from the inside out. I still remembered that night. I thought the sky had fallen. I thought the whole world had shrunk to just me. Alone. Liang's couch springs had dug into my back. The smoke had burned my throat. That bowl of beef noodles had taken a long time to finish. Who would have thought? Months later, I'd be standing in my own office, with my own team, signing my own contracts. With my name on every page, not given by anyone. Earned, Boss Chun. Chun Yi called from behind me. Have you seen the new requirements from ATL? Lin Yu says they want to add a module. Can we deliver before the holiday? I turned, walked back to my desk, and sat down. Send it to me. I'll prioritize and check resource availability with Old Zheng. We can do it, but it'll be tight. Tell the client to open their data interface early. Chun Yi started typing. A minute later, he gave me an OK sign. I opened the new requirements document, placed my fingers on the keyboard, and started typing the first lines of the solution framework. Letters appeared on the screen, familiar and fluid. Outside, the snow fell thicker, blanketing the city in white. In the distance, that silver high-rise blurred behind the veil of snow, like a watercolor painting left in the rain. That building held code I'd written over 3 years. It held the desk where I'd sat for 7 years. It held the person I once thought I'd spend my life with. Now all of it stayed there in the snow. Cleanly covered. When spring came, it would melt away, and that was fine. That evening, we worked late to finalize the timeline. Around 9, I told everyone to go home. Old Zheng patted my shoulder on his way out. Don't stay too late. I smiled and nodded. After they left, I turned off most of the lights, leaving only the warm yellow glow over my desk. The papers were spread in front of me. I pulled out the notebook from my drawer, unfolded Li Wei's note, read it one more time, and tucked it back in. My phone lit up with a message from Liang. Chinku, dinner at my place this weekend. My mom says she misses you. I replied. Sure, I'll bring wine. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair, looking up at the high ceiling. The red brick walls were lit by a few warm lamps, glowing like little suns. The whole space was silent, except for the sound of snow falling outside. Soft, dense. I thought for a moment, then reached into my drawer and pulled out a small piece of red pine I'd bought with Chun Yi at a flea market a few days ago. It was palm-sized, smooth at the edges. I found a marker, uncapped it, and wrote 2 characters on the wood. Fingerprint. I propped the wooden piece up on my desk, in the most visible spot. The wood was rough and warm, the writing crooked, not beautiful, but I liked it. Not a grand motto, just a reminder. Everything you do leaves a mark. What's been stolen, erased, denied. If it was made by your hands, it can't be wiped away. I turned off the desk light, put on my coat, grabbed my bag, and walked out. As I passed the ginkgo tree at the entrance of the creative park, the snow was piled thick. It crunched under my feet. I looked up. Snow was still falling, but the night sky was surprisingly clear, with a few faint stars visible. I took a deep breath of the clean, cold air and walked toward the subway station. Snow settled on my shoulders and hair. Cool and light. Tomorrow was another day. New projects to write, new teams to lead, new roads to walk. The old accounts. Settled, the debts. Repaid, everything else left behind. Clean and clear. The warm yellow light of the subway entrance glowed in the distance, bright against the snowy night. I quickened my pace, walking into that glow, leaving behind a trail of footprints. Deep and shallow. All the way back to the ginkgo tree. The snow would cover them eventually, but underneath. Those marks were always there.